Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining our Active Nutrition and Nutrition Integrated Trends for 2025 and beyond. My name is Nick Morgan, founder of Nutrition Integrated. We've got a great team of 10 here based in the UK, pulling together a huge amount of data and insights covering a number of areas of our industry, focused from protein powders to bars to drinks, creatine, pre-workout, women's health, nootropics, and so much more. Now, the purposes of today, of course, is to give you our lens and our steer on what the outlook for 2025 is, and of course, beyond. And we do try to do that in a way that feels a little bit different to everything else that is out there. And I'll try to explain as I go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to move a few things around, and then I'm going to start bringing this up. Now, my presentation and my aim today is to present for around about 25 to 30 minutes. Hopefully this will give you a really good flavor with regards to what we believe is moving forward and some of the key principles that are driving the dynamics of our industry. Of course, I've framed it as what next and where next. Happy to take questions at the end of it. And hopefully you'll enjoy the principles to which we apply, and you'll find some of the areas to which we discuss interesting. So as a starting point, I think it's crucial to always frame that 2025 trends, or even the word trend, as a really important one to try and interpret. I think a lot of people walk around trade shows, they walk around our environment, and they're always asking the question, what is new? I think this is all about evolution. It's never so much about revolution. And I think the best way to describe this is that active nutrition has never been so competitive. Oh my God. If you just look at the number of products that exist, if you look at the number of products that are launching within any one category, it just continues to expand at a rate of knots. With that, categories are evolving, brands are democratizing, and of course, we're doing this across a macroeconomic sort of backdrop of, I guess, price-sensitive consumers. So there is a lot happening. In one sense, that's a good thing. And of course, on the flip side of that, it just means it's a lot more competitive. And navigation and the strategic focus that you will need to apply has never been more called into question, as in you will have to be good at your job if you're going to be successful, because not everyone can win. And I think with that, you need to understand how to cut through the noise. And if I'm honest, I think trends is really, really obvious. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to tell you that the focus of attention is on women's health, for example. It doesn't take a genius to tell you that cleaner labels is really important. The key thing is to try and understand what is happening sort of beneath that, and what does that mean in terms of the principles that brands need to apply in order to be competitive. And that is the approach that we're going to take. Now, I have to always start just by framing what do we have as the context to active nutrition. This is an important sort of framework to which we've always worked over the last few years. And that is just to remind you that active nutrition is not just a new term for sports nutrition. It very much embraces what I would describe a more proactive and wellness landscape. Now, we always do this by framing the context of the category on these sort of axes. On the vertical axis, we think about accessibility. So science at the top, more ingredients, more dosages, more branded ingredients, more clinical science. So people looking for marginal gains or the real ingredients that can make a big health difference. At the bottom, it doesn't mean to say that science isn't important. It's just that taste, texture, format, price sensitive attributes will dial up, whilst the science itself will dial down slightly. And I think that's all about accessibility. On the horizontal axis from left to right, it's just representing the different benefits or the way that people engage with our products that we provide them. And they do that through the benefit lens of being performance orientated. Again, I think that's marginal gains for before, during, and after exercise for the purposes of pre-workout, post-workout and recovery, and then all the way through to a more of a health aspect. And I think you can sort of draw a line of where brands sit on here. Now, that context of active nutrition pretty much enables you to sort of frame the different types of brands that exist. In the top left-hand corner, that is the original domain of sports nutrition. So products that improve performance before, during, and after exercise. Top right, I think that's the vibrant world that I think people feel is really exciting. You know, functional nutrition, products that improve health, body and mind, or flip that on its head, mind and body. And I think the word that I do love more than any is the promotion of agelessness. So I think you could fit collagen into there, you could fit greens into there, you can fit anything related to sort of brain health into there as well. In the bottom left-hand corner, the outrageously high growth area of everyday energy. I think that has manifested itself, of course, in energy drinks. We know that that is defined by brands like Red Bull, and then more relevant democratized brands like, to some extent, Prime, and of course, Cellucor, and so on. We've also moved into the area of energy powders. Maybe that's more sort of convenient on a cost per serve aspect too. And of course, that links to that sort of whole generational energy play around energy and gaming, although I don't think the category itself is gaming anymore. In the bottom right-hand corner, it's all about convenient food and snacks. You could place a grenade in there, of course, Huel, Y Food, Plenty Jimmy Joy, and a few other brands like that too, protein drinks and so forth. That is the active nutrition landscape that we are very much entrenched in, and we capture products that go from left to right and from top to bottom. Now, the blueprint of products that do sit within that is really quite clear. I would describe this as a very stable blueprint of the nutrition architecture that exists. And so people tend to shop by ingredient, they shop by concern, they might shop by a distinct category, diet, gender, format, and goal, for example. The reason I always frame this slide is just to remind you that when you go searching for trends and people sort of go evolution, revolution, old, or sorry, new products, the key thing here is we're working in an environment where when was the last time you saw something really new, a brand new product, an ingredient you've never seen before? Everything really is a reincarnation of something that has existed for quite some time. If you take women's health, for example, what we find is it's been a really important drop down of a concern. You could shop by gender, you could shop by particular ingredients. And so, in fact, the architecture that we're working in here is very, very stable and it's very, very well defined. The future ultimately has always been about doing the same thing, just differently. And that differently is about getting to understand how some of the terms and the need states and the occasions have become more relevant to consumers today as opposed to what they were maybe 10 years ago. And in fact, that is the challenge of 2025. So before I get into the key trends, or that I think are really important, the trends that I think have come through are ultimately a response to the primary dynamics of the category as it plays out today. And if I would describe it as the category is bigger, it's far less defined, and there is an informed opinion, whether we like it or not, at the touch of a button. So the new reality that we are working within is very clear. And one of the number one dynamics that we're looking to challenge, that is challenging us at the moment, is almost what I would describe as blurred vision. So where does one category start and when does another one stop? The lines between categories are increasingly blurred. They're increasing the breadth of competition whilst it's challenging brands on their own purpose and permission. So really what I'm saying is, what is and what isn't sports nutrition? Even to some extent, when has a product decided to become solely about women's health or not women's health? And I'll put products related to brain fog or mental nootropics in there. Products sometimes are positioned attitudinally as opposed to formulation wise. I think collagen, as the picture suggests here, is a very, very good example. And that's because it's collagen, as it shows here. Is it in the beauty category? Is the collagen category in itself just a huge category? Of course, they all relate to joint and bone. So is it the joint and bone category? And of course, collagen could be in the sports nutrition category. Now, there is no right or wrong answer here. The purpose here is the blurred vision between category start and stop just means that to some extent, unless you capture data in a particular way, the size of a category is really just because most people want to suffice corridor conversations to suggest the category is big and it's growing. No one knows now what is and what is not included in it. And the blurred vision is creating all sorts of challenges for brands, particularly around their own purpose and their own permission. And by that, I mean, what is it that they have the permission to offer consumers, and what is it that consumers want from them? I'll also just frame the latest product from a brand called Zoe, which is UK centric for everyone who's not in the UK today, but it's worth having a look at. Now, that image looks like a supplement. It's sold in a refillable pouch. It's coming in an aluminium, beautiful little tub that's for the refillable pack. The dosing spoon, for example, is there for you. To all intents and purposes, that is a supplement. The only difference is what is sold in that product is literally nuts and seeds. And so the blurred vision between a supplement, a product, and also a food has become sort of broken down to the extent of what is it again that we're trying to navigate and what's our permission. We also have this huge challenge of generational shift. This is particularly interesting within the sports nutrition category, and whilst we should and always define consumers by their usage and attitudes, to be fair, many categories remain stereotyped by age, and we still talk about age quite a lot. And we would say a sweet spots for sports nutrition might be between 18 to 25, maybe up to 30. But there is recognition, of course, that there is a 50-year-old sports nutrition consumer. Of course, there's a 65-year-old sports nutrition consumer, and so on. The generational shift is a real challenge for brands. So how does a brand remain relevant to a new generation of consumers, whilst also remaining relevant to the legacy generation of consumers? So effectively, if you were, let's just say my age was hypothetically in the early 40s, if I grew up in sports nutrition over 20 years ago, then the brands I grew up with today look and feel different to me in 2025 or soon to be. And the latest brands that are gathering pace with a younger generation are entirely different and have different aspects to them. And I think if I was to bring this to life, the original brand of protein, Gold Standard Whey, Glanbia Performance Nutrition, Optimum Nutrition, versus the democratized, self-defined lifestyle sports nutrition brand of Ghost, you only need to take the visual to appreciate the difference between old, but that doesn't mean to say archaic or anything. That is old and beautiful in its own way, versus new and democratized and generationally relevant. So as a category evolves over time, it becomes more mature and it gains history. The challenge we're all facing is at what stage of the lifespan of the consumers are we targeting, and can a brand ultimately target the newer consumers that move into a category, whereas can they also target those that have been around for some time? Arguably, the 40-year-old sports nutrition consumer is actually left at a loss because it feels like there are less brands for them. That is an important one. And then finally, the impact of AI. So technology is changing the way we shop and the way we engage and what is available. And artificial intelligence and chat and open AI, for example, ChatGPT, it's massively influencing awareness, decision making, and knowledge. And I think the challenge that everyone's facing right now is it helping us make better decisions or just some decisions that make that person feel more comfortable? That is the new reality we're working in. They're not the trends, by the way. They're just the facts that we're dealing with. And these things are really, really quite crucial to every brand owner out there in terms of navigating what it is they offer and how they're going to cut through the noise. So these are the trends that I framed last year in 2024, thinking about the last 12 months that have gone. Of course, for the purposes of today, I will move on and talk about slightly different things or how these have all evolved. I think what is absolutely crucial, though, is I would keep a whole host of these for 2025 as well. I think these principles haven't gone away. In fact, I think they remain remarkably resolute. And I feel like actually they're fundamentally entrenched in the way brands are trying to do things better. So without going over them, but just giving you key context, very much brands have redefined and reimagined areas. I think A meal replacement into a convenient food is a great example. A high protein bar into better for you chocolate is another good example. Breaking the taboo, particularly raising the quality of communications around women's health, breaking the poo taboo and brain health is very much there. So raising the quality of those conversations so that people aren't just talking in their own little silence and communities. Need connectivity is really based around health platforms, and recognizing that one single ingredient or one single product does not do everything that people need within a particular area. Surprisingly Familiar is about creating a phenomenal experience. So what is the opening starter kit that arrives at your door when you sign up for the first subscription scheme? It could be a gummy that makes dietary supplements more tasty and more democratized. Of course, it can be flavor and it can be texture, but it's about giving people something that they want to tell others about. Product and beyond, again, is the 360-degree aspect. It could be technology, it could be hardware, but everything around the product that now is creating more of a fundamental purpose around why people buy into something. And then at the bottom, the areas that we really framed were generational energy, mind over body, the subtlety of shift, agelessness, the sheer fact that someone decided that they wanted to take themselves to court for the purposes of changing their age because that's not how they felt, just is a fantastic example of just the way people are starting to view age in the future years. Digital impact and foundational health. Now that's what we framed previously. This is where we're going to go in 2025, and I'm going to take you on a little tour of each one. So before you read across, this is what's going to happen. There are 10, and again, at the top, the trends underpin all next generation brands, and I think they should fundamentally define you. At the bottom, the trends define where brands are focusing proposition and they build expertise. Now, just as a caveat as we move forward, I don't think anyone should take anything literally. Now, there is no one trend that is solely related to one particular thing necessarily. It's about grasping what multiple things are doing and appreciating what has made them successful and how it's going to evolve. Now, I'll go through each one's individually, but innovation by communication, hopefully that is explicit as it says. It basically means you have to do more than just create a good product. It's got to be all of the communications around it. Specialists versus generalists, going back to basics, I think it's a massive one. The birth of originality. Again, how is people going to cut through, and then finding the substance behind the logo. So it's ultimately consumers are diving deep for certain attributes. Health hacks, really interesting one. Performance 2.0, recovery redefined, root cause, and a parallel universe. That one's probably the most abstract, but it will be very clear when you get there. Innovation by communication. Everyone wants a new shiny product. Everyone wants a new shiny ingredient. Everyone wants to talk about a new clinical study, perhaps. The reality is product categories are increasingly homogenous in terms of ingredients and claims or benefits, and new technologies are increasingly quite hard to explain. And so brands have to work harder to communicate their message and to stand out from the crowd, and it has to be more than just the product attributes. And things that are going to influence this, no doubt, will be influencers, AI, collaborations, partnerships, and messaging that continues to break the taboo as fundamental. And it's a recognition that it is a science, but it's the art of the science. Now, I want to highlight 3 key areas that people have spoken about through 2025, and just to highlight how difficult it is. Everyone loves creatine. I love creatine. Creatine has a phenomenal amount of benefits that go way beyond its traditional world of high intensity exercise, repeated sprints, and so on. Definitely linked to brain health, definitely linked to areas of things like concussion if you were in sport, and it definitely links to things like cognition and functioning of the brain. If we were to review 936 brands, 1,523 products, there is no obvious product targeting the brain as it stands today. The category is remarkably homogenous. There is no one brand at the moment, despite the industry talking about the importance of creatine and its renaissance into these other areas. Now, that doesn't mean to say consumers haven't bought ON's creatine and decided to use it to improve their brain health. I would also suggest that if they have, they would be in the minority. So for all of the discussion about creatine, which I think is fundamentally right, by the way, we're going to have to do more than just put creatine in a bottle, a capsule, a liquid, or in other formats. There's going to need to be more creativity and communication around it, because as it stands, despite us talking about the renaissance of creatine, sales are good, probably because they've gone back to basics of sports nutrition. The reality is there's so much more that needs to be done, and no one's really at all captured that one. And I think they will, but the principle is innovation by communication should be a fundamental part of almost a gate stage process. Non-dairy dairy. If I had a pound for a penny for every time someone asked me within your big data set of protein powders, Nick, how are we seeing any more non-dairy dairy? Now, I'll caveat that and say we shouldn't be in Europe because technically it would be a novel food. In the US, we definitely should. Natrive and Mulus for their animal-free whey protein would be a good example. We're tracking nearly 1,000 brands, over 2,000 whey protein products, and fermented whey, despite all of the discussion over the last 12 months, remains unbelievably scarce. That doesn't mean to say it's a bad product. It doesn't mean to say it's wrong. It just means that people haven't worked out how to communicate it well enough or spend enough time and effort on the communication. So a massive area in the future now is going to be literally having innovation agendas around communication, as opposed to just the assumption that we innovate a product and then we just work out what the product description will say. It has to do much more than that. Finally, I also just want to frame plant protein. You know, if you just took in Europe, but it's the same in the US, pea protein dominates the formulation. And in fact, the whole plant protein powder market is remarkably homogenous. Remarkably homogenous in taste also. And the point being is for any one brand to win on that, it's either going to be remarkably expensive at a cost per acquisition of consumers, or they're going to have to do something incredibly interesting around communication. And I think that's what people are going to start to do. And I would just frame this one. I'm sure there are a few people on the call that are interested in women's health. Never thought I'd bring these types of things up on a work-related webinar. Interesting new brand focused around women's health, and it very much encapsulates to some extent the types of approach to communication that is a little bit more taboo orientated. It's a little bit more in your face. It's a little bit more eye-catching. Whatever you describe this as, it is just even the basic forms of communication is going to be a big area where people are going to innovate. Now, I would say that type of advertising is going to freak out quite a lot of big brands. For the smaller brands, it's a little bit easier. Number two, specialists versus generalists. Just more and more, dead simple, brands are creating platforms. By that, I mean health platforms, or they're building expertise around one platform. In effect, it is the difference between owning something versus offering everything. Now, this doesn't mean to say offering everything is a bad thing. It doesn't mean to say there's not some phenomenally great tech-savvy D2C brand that are offering a lot of things under a particular area. But the only way, as it stands at the moment, with the ocean getting bigger, the category getting larger, becoming less defined, with the parameters between categories broken down, the difference between a product and a supplement and a food just up in the air, the only way to capture the attention of consumers in today's world is to own something. Now, that ownership can be a population group, women's health. It could be a product type. There are brands known to be owners of pre-workout. It can be a need. That need could be the owner of immunity. It could be a technology, to which I would point you all in the direction of liposomal technology, which people seem to love more than anything else. It could be an ingredient. There are brands solely doing one product based on one ingredient. Mushrooms would be a really good example. The way to win in 2025, arguably, is to be more of a specialist versus a generalist. If you gain success, of course, the challenge becomes how do you grow your platforms to continue the growth aligned to probably the investment that you've taken over time. That's a challenge you'll be happy to take on, assuming you're in the position of already winning. But you can't just come in and be a bland approach to products when you really need to be specialists. Now, the challenge within that, of course, is how specialized do you become? Because just by being a brand that says women's health at the front of it, does that mean you're a specialist and you can cut through? Unfortunately, you've now got 252 brands that are also female founded and focusing on women's health. So within that, it might be that you own the menopause challenge, or you might own, in this instance, like Needed, prenatal fertility, pregnancy, and the postpartum scenario, and you could be on that piece. Specialists over generalist is going to continue to drive our category. Of course, within that, it does mean it will become more fragmented, which in itself brings challenge. However, specialists and specialism is going to be how people build their products, brands, and ranges. I think this is an interesting one because what happened, or what has happened over the last few years, which have been quite tumultuous with both pandemics, price, raw ingredients, and so on, is that a few brands have definitely been burnt. And by that, I mean brands have been burnt because they've kind of gone out of their lane. They've increased innovation and they've done lots of things that sort of challenge their position. What we're seeing in a lot of the data sets that we track, we're seeing a lot of brands focusing innovation on their core products and less so new products. Effectively, the disruption of specialists is causing brands to focusing on what they're good at. So if you had become more of a generalist over time, inevitably within that, you already have top performing products, which basically emphasize what you were really good at and what you were known at in the first instance. So if you had a brand of 10 products and you went to 200 products over a period of time within the area of sports nutrition, I suspect that most of those brands are now doubling down on what they're really good at. And the reason we've got Cellucor C4 on here is that it is a reminder that the big brands and many of the others are really doubling down on what they do really, really well. They've gone back to basics and they're making what they do even better. So it doesn't mean to say it's same old, but they're focusing innovation, you could argue it's renovation, on their core products. They're doubling down on the basics. Because do you know what? The basics and the core products is what people actually love within a particular area. And it, again, it brings you back from generalism to specialism. Now, the reason I've also highlighted Care of, which is the image on the right, which is a personalization platform. It was almost the seminal personalization brand sold to Bayer in 2021 for a large number of US dollars. Is Bayer's effectively sort of been mothballed by Bayer, where they've removed their funding. So one brand, of course, personalized based on effectively a questionnaire to enable people to find the right products for them, to some extent has been mothballed. So 4 years after personalization was the future, one of the biggest areas where it has been acquired, it has become mothballed. And so whilst personalized wrestles with front-end execution, the daily all-in-one essentials fly. So basically, we all were thought that personalization in the future, which it might yet be, by the way, but actually in reality, personalization, despite all of the back-end developments, so back-end technology, AI, uh, technologies and so on, is all flying. What we haven't managed to get right is the front-end execution that is non-arduous, simple, easy to do, and products that people believe are truly personalized for them and not just stratified or pulled off a shelf behind a brick wall for them. The purpose is brands are going back to basics. They're focusing on the core and they are absolutely loving, actually, ironically, or, the complete opposite to personalization. They've gone for the all-in-one essentials like superfoods, convenient food, hydration, and so on. And back to basics is safe. It's simple. And do you know what? Consumers totally get it. Overcomplication and over-engineering products is the scourge of our industry because people differentiate for the wrong reasons and then they make products overcomplicated. And I think that has definitely happened over the last few years. And That is why, with all of the macro dynamics going on, back to basics is a key principle that we're definitely seeing, and certainly some of our partners are doing in focusing their innovation moving forward. The birth of originality. I'm just going to point you to the flavor. Now, originality comes in many different ways, but you know what's really interesting is if you look at FMCG categories, they're defined by brands that are fundamentally unique. A Pringle is a Pringle, Coke is Coke, even Pepsi's Pepsi. Even in chocolate bars, which I've discussed a lot in protein bars, if you look, a Snickers is a Snickers, a Mars bar is a Mars bar, but yet protein bars are all the same. And then they come in 10 flavors of the same thing. Whereas in most categories, they're a lot more unique, they're a lot more original. Active nutrition categories are defined by brands that are broadly very similar. So the question is originality. Where is the originality for brands moving forward? Now, one interesting area is flavor. And it's a really interesting conversation we've spent a lot of work on because when we track flavors, if you go into protein powders, they're all chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, banana, maybe a bit of caramel, and so on. If you go into pre-workout, it's all blue raspberry and it's all orange and so on. If you go into collagen, it's actually interestingly all or majority-wise unflavored. Bloom, acquired by Nutrabolt, that's an original flavor. Precision Fuel, to which this occurs in a lot of gels, they're original flavors. No one knows what those original are. In some instances in gels, it's to do with the lack of flavor or just not having any flavor fatigue. But the concept of original flavors is really interesting. Now, I would happily have this argument with anybody in that they believe that greens need to improve on their flavors and we should have 7 or 8 different flavors of greens so that the consumer could choose between an orange and a berry. I personally believe the one reason consumers still choose one superfood brand over another is because of their original, sort of unflavored or original, they decide is the best version of it. And if we create brands with 4 or 5 flavors, all you do is create a homogeneous category of the same flavors where it will become less of a differentiating factor. There is huge originality in having original flavors. Those things are unique. And that is absolutely interesting. Now, of course, originality can be many more things. It can be just legacy. So Optimum Nutrition could bring out something to do with originals, just like trainers have previously. And of course, collaborations, packaging, to name a few, is where you can play on originality. And with that, I just want to point you to a brand called Rootless. It's actually a really interesting brand. It's based on just a single bite, a functional bite. But actually, if you look at the originality of the packaging it arrives in, and also this box Rootless, and the imagery that it has, if you look at this, they have completely redrawn the approach of where a superfood bite fits into your supplementary routine, but yet how it can be quite original in the way it is actually sort of merchandised in your own home. Super interesting. Substance behind the logo. Everyone knows we talk clean labels. Consumers don't want clean labels, they want cleaner labels. And the subtlety in that is basically that it's not a binary discussion of you're clean and you're not clean. It is about choice and the drive to make better products sustainable. Now, within this, you've basically got science, sustainability, and you've got the product attributes. And I think Wild Nutrition and All Real do a great job in basically emphasizing that even though we know these things are important to us, consumers are now more now than ever looking to find what is described as the substance behind the logo. So you can say, hey, this is just about a clean label trend. It's actually about demonstrating your values and living, breathing your values, and it doesn't feel like it's just a greenwashing type thing. Now, the reason we are capturing this, something that's been available for some time, is just we're seeing more and more brands make subtlety differences in the way they're adopting all of these cues, whether it's across packaging or their evidence or their sourcing and the provenance of ingredients and so on. Do they have to make a really big deal of it? That's up to you as a brand, but somewhere someone is looking to ensure the substance behind the logo of the brand or the product, has just got more to it. Now, those were the top 5. We'll go into the bottom 5. As always, I keep going and maybe getting into it, but health hacks is super cool. More and more brands have really gone down simplified route of health innovation. So again, for a long time, personalization has been put forward as the future. And again, it might well be, and I'm totally not against it. In fact, I'm sure it is. But in the meantime, whilst personalization has struggled to create something that is simple, non-arduous, um, time-consuming, consumers have just gone for high impact daily essentials. People have gone for the all-in-ones. They've done macronutrients with Huel, they've done micronutrients with the AG1, they've done hydration with liquid IV, they've done coffee and so on. And in fact, the evolution of the foundational nutrition and daily essentials is effectively these areas that I would describe as health hacks, where people are looking to drop in on your existing behaviors. So instead of trying to get the consumer to think, oh, Christ, I've got to get 3 products into my repertoire, I've got to buy them, when will I have them? What they're trying to do is they're trying to pimp an occasion. So mushrooms have pimped the coffee and the hot drink occasion. The two other examples here is instead of just thinking, I've got to do my hydration, you would have a Joe's or Ocean's, Joe Wellstead's brand, with the hydration, which is the soap dispenser. I mean, probably doesn't want it described as a soap dispenser, but the way that could sit and integrate with your everyday world, with your habits is really interesting. The way mushrooms has evolved into the coffee or other areas now that are pimping the coffee occasion, it's all about hacks. And then the genius about this collagen jelly is a couple of things. It's highlighting the hack around pomegranates for their particular ingredient, but that is a gummy, but it doesn't look like a gummy. People wouldn't even describe it as a gummy, but to all intents and purposes, they have hacked the gummy, and instead of making it feel like a supplement consumption, they've created a different health hack that someone could feel they could have that more on the go or travel and so on. And this element of health hacks is about making tangible differences, but with the least impact possible. And the irony here, and it sounds like I'm against personalization, which I am fundamentally not, so please don't take that, is that the irony here is that personalization was supposed to make things simpler, but yet as it stands at the moment, despite the direction of the back-end technologies, the front-end execution is way too arduous and is actually having not as much difference, but for too much impact. And health hacks is about big difference, less impact on our everyday lives. And do you know where you do that? You create products that are integrated with our daily behaviors. And that is what that is all about. Health hacks can also be technology. And I will just point out that there's a lot of hacking going on with patches, where people are launching things like these patches which sit on the skin, and a topical execution of nutrition in a different form, so that in fact you don't feel like you're consuming something, but it is going somewhere on the skin. And I can highlight this one here, why patches and so on and so forth. Wearable wellness patches as a different approach to also health hacking, but seamlessly integrating into your day. I'll just do that there, point that out, and just say hold the breath on that area. Performance 2.0, sports nutrition before, during, and after. Typically thought about aesthetics, thinks about endurance. Although it's a subtle change, there is a lot more going on around circadian rhythm performance. So Human 24 isn't a new brand, but definitely we're seeing more people think about performance related to circadian rhythms and throughout the day. We've also got ESN and also MyProtein effectively launching hybrid endurance ranges, so around High Rocks and CrossFit. Not necessarily new, but the product execution and the approach is definitely new, and it's created a sort of hybrid area of strength and endurance, which is changing the concept of what performance nutrition is, as opposed to maybe aesthetic nutrition. I'll also point out that energy drinks are now performance energy drinks. Numa is a good example, but there's a much bigger set of brands that are more iconic in the US. And that whole area of performance is really fascinating and continues to get a new lease of life. And in fact, most people would be like, sports nutrition's old, move away. In fact, it's not. The concept of performance is so good that it's relevant now, not just into sport, but it's evolving into so many different areas of lifestyle, to the point that performance can be for anyone, anywhere. And if you do like mushroom chocolates, a different area of performance would be the nightcap for deep sleep. If you want a happy ending, again, quote unquote, never thought I'd ever say it live on air, or if you want brainstorm for sharp focus, you even get elements of performance integrated at totally different parts of the day in ways you've never even thought about it. And so actually performance is a word that can take many brands into many different places, and we should not shy away from it, because I don't know anyone who doesn't want to be their best self. Recovery redefined. You could call this brackets detox redefined. So overnight recovery is one of those areas that feels untapped despite obvious relevance. The overnight recovery, or detox redefined, is hugely gathering pace. Now, tipple, here's to the good times. Take tipple tonight, feel fresh tomorrow, says what it does on the tin, is aligned to performance. It's conceptually about consumers maximizing life, and whilst it feels like it's younger generation, it'll evolve for ages. Those that are engaged with us regularly will have heard me talk about this one for at least the last 3 or 4 months. And for every time we talk about it, we've found more brands. I could probably give you 30 to 40 brands that are effectively doing overnight hangover related cures. Now, a hangover feels like a struggler type societal thing that we wouldn't hope people are doing. The reality is people are just trying to burn the candle at both ends. It doesn't also need to include alcohol. It's just about societally having a great time, but being your best self the next day. That is what tipple is all about. And there are more and more people going after it. So even in the shot category, you've got the nightcap, same day prevention. You've got the morning after relief. You've got the pre-drinking about the flush. Really in tune, generationally relevant aspects. And so for so long, people have been desperate to go, I feel like casein is the winner for overnight recovery. They've been talking about, really cool things for overnight recovery, and I like all of them. But we've always asked the question, why do people not buy them? And it hasn't quite fit into their behavior. And there'll still be someone who'll be able to do that well. As it stands at the moment, recovery redefined is the reimagination, the redefinition of the supplement industry, talking to people being able to go out at night and being phenomenally good the next morning. There are a lot of brands in here. It is the perfect concept to launch at the trade show for any branded ingredient suppliers or ingredient suppliers in here. This is a huge area that kind of people don't necessarily want to talk about. It is absolutely gathering pace. Penultimate, root cause. We've previously discussed the importance of agelessness as an overarching concept. Effectively, what you do today is important for tomorrow. I always talk about the pixelated picture. So if you want to know what you look like in the future, you need to know what you do today. So if you want to be a high definition picture in the future, then every drink, meal, and snack, exercise occasion, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a day will count to your high definition pixel in your high definition picture of you when you're 80. The evolution of this proposition for consumers is to basically get to the root cause. Cellular health, and I just would say, if you want to go and check this brand out, because just for a small price, you can get a great Age Defy starter pack for 1,000 Swiss francs, and you can navigate that all you like. So it is expensive, but people are desperately trying to get into the heart of agelessness. And at the root of that is cellular health. It is the starting point at the bottom of the chain of command that moves you up into inflammation and free radicals and so on up. That is where people are going. Interestingly, though, people are also trying to get to the root of all of these areas, and some of the winning ingredients which people are using in these products tends to be very plant orientated, and those ones, based on the premonition of found in nature, plays to the substance behind the logo, is falling into that. And so root cause is a really interesting area moving forward. And the final one is a parallel universe. I don't think anybody in today's world doesn't or won't talk about GLP-1 based nutrition. So GLP-1 basically around the weight management category. Now, if you weren't aware, there's a drug in America called Ozempic. People consume Ozempic. It makes them feel a little bit fuller. It changes their entire nutritional intake on the basis that they want to lose weight. The impact of that is people on Ozempic are buying less in store and they're changing nutrition and they're being advised to take more nutritional products. This quote is just a reminder that Nestle have created a GLP-1 weight loss site where you can actually you can shop companion products. So what I mean by that is if you go to GLP-1 Nutrition, you can now shop all of the Nestle brands. So Garden of Life, Vital Proteins, Noon, these are all their brands. And so the purpose for talking about this is GLP-1 nutrition is almost targeting a new consumer set. It's a parallel universe of consumers, but for every product that exists in active nutrition. Because what Nestle have just done is they've created a microsite of their exact product range that is available to active nutrition consumers. And they've said, you're on Ozempic and a GLP-1 related weight loss drug. So you come to this site and we will direct you how to shop our existing products, but for the purpose of you being on that weight loss drug. The products that are going to win in this space, ironically, will still be protein. And it's probably going to be protein waters. That's great news for all you protein suppliers out there. And it's probably going to be protein shots because most people are feeling full and they don't necessarily want to have too much to fill in. This is a gigantic related trend that is very relevant to our existing product range, but it's almost a parallel universe of consumers. So the question will be, will a traditional protein brand as of today be able to win in that space? Or will it be a completely new brand altogether? As it stands, at the beginning of this huge wave, it is all about selling people companion products, so products that currently exist in the market, for the purposes of brand new population of people that are following a very particular routine, weight loss related prescriptive drugs for the purposes of improving their overall life. It is a parallel universe and it is going to change the dynamics of how many people are shopping for active nutrition products from low sugar to high protein to many other areas. So to summarize, I definitely spoke longer than I should have done, but we're still within the hour period. 2025 and beyond is around these major areas. So innovation by communication. I think it says what it is on the tin. It's not just about products, it's about the communications. Specialists versus generalists. And within that, because of the specialism, a lot of people are going to go back to basics to continue to do what they do really well, but they'll want to ensure that what they do really well remains good enough over time and meets the demands of consumers today. So they're going to go back to basics and they're going to renovate. Within that, they should still be finding their originality. So finding what it is about originality that can make it unique, because our world is surrounded by a lot of products and there's a lot of imitation. And in a world of imitation, you have to be an original. And if you have an original, which could come from flavor, it could come from other attributes, packaging. If you haven't seen the packaging for Heights, for example, that is very original. It's another good example of how someone can stand out from the crowd. Underneath all that, people are going to have some decent substance behind the logo, because collective responsibility as an industry will mean that we will absolutely need to have those things. I know it's a tough wrestle with costs for all brands listening, but ultimately the substance behind the logo is going to be a key determining factor for sustainability over time. The areas that you really want to drive forward, health hacks. So how do you take your products and make them more intrinsic to everyday behaviors? And I just think about how you can pimp an occasion, you can pimp an existing habit, or you can pimp an existing product. That's kind of like the hacks of health. And the irony for this is, despite everyone wanting to be more personalized, most people just want a great all-in-one simple health hack, because that's what fits into a convenient lifestyle. Performance 2.0, we've got a lot more areas of performance. And in fact, that word is not related to sport anymore. It's everyday performance from the bedroom to the court to the football pitch to wherever it may be. Performance is taking on a new world. Recovery redefined is all about overnight recovery, detox redefined, whatever you might describe. Have a really good look at that whole connecting one day to the next with the last activity. At the moment, overnight always been described around sleep and totally makes sense. I mean, that's what we're doing. But it's not been about connecting what people do at the end of the day to connecting what people do at the beginning of the day. So it's almost like we just dialed in on sleep and what happens, and we didn't really make the bridging connection between actually how people live their lives. Root cause, that's all about cellular health. Parallel universe is basically going to impact everybody, and that is the growth of GLP-1 related weight loss restrictive drugs like Ozempic and others. And it's going to create a whole new world of consumers shopping the current active nutrition landscape. And the fascinating thing about that is we just have no idea what type of brand is going to win in that space. And it is all up in the air for someone to go after. So to conclude, don't ask what's new. Look at what's changed, what's evolving, what's redefining. The landscape products, needs, and ingredients is really well defined. It's about taking these principles and interpreting how they can affect where you are based, ingredient or brand or manufacturer, and it best suits the needs of today. I think recovery redefined, performance 2.0, health hacks, daily essentials, going back to basics reflects where consumers are today, and they will be in 2025. So with that, I hope that gives you a good understanding of the 2025 and beyond. Happy to take really any questions and hope that was really interesting for you. Please feel free to ask any questions that you want.